This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, globally, record high stocks slowed their charge today as concerns grew about slightly disappointing economic data coming out from China. Emerging market stocks ended a four-day winning streak, hitting a 6-week high before trading flat at the end of the session. Now, in South Africa, the all-share lost almost 8%. Locally, investors are watching upcoming PMI surveys for clues about the pace of recovery from the pandemic. We saw all major indices down today, with financials falling the most by over 8%. Now, also coming up on today's show, the China International Fair for Trade and Services opens in Beijing. We give you a glimpse into Egypt's new administrative capital that is a technological world away from Cairo. And Tanzania's Serengeti National Park sees a return of tourists as COVID-19 vaccination continues around the world. Now, a major trade show has opened in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping spoke via video at the opening ceremony for the China International Fair for Trade in Services. Now, he announced a new stock exchange will be established in Beijing to boost innovation among smaller companies and deepen reforms. Here's Choi Huai with the story.
With the theme towards digital future and service-driven development, this year's event has attracted over 10,000 companies from 153 countries and regions. They will be participating in both online and offline exhibitions. The number of Global 500 and industry-leading companies exceeded last year's inaugural event.
Trading services is a key component of international trade and an important area of economic and trade cooperation between countries. It has a big role to play in fostering a new development paradigm. We will work with all other parties to uphold openness, cooperation, mutual benefit, and win-win, share opportunities in the growth of services trade, and promote world economic recovery and growth.
Various activities will be held during the 6-day event, including over 100 forums for entrepreneurs, experts, and officials to discuss hot topics in the service trade. Organizers say that digital economy and carbon neutrality will be the main focus this year. On top of that, finance, tourism, education, and sports sectors will also be represented. President Xi said the event shows China's determination to promote high-level opening up and support global economic recovery.
We will open up at a higher level by implementing across the country a negative list for cross-border services trade, and by exploring the development of national demonstration zones for the innovative development of trading services. We will create more possibilities for cooperation by scaling up support for the growth of the services sector in Belt and Road partner countries, and by sharing China's technological achievements with the rest of the world.
Currently, the share of service trade accounts for nearly 56% of China's GDP. Imports and exports of services totaled over $360 billion in the first half of the year, up almost 7% year-on-year.
This is the second time China is hosting this event under the pandemic. Domestically, the service sector is now a strong pillar of the economy, but on a global level, trading services continues to lag behind. Organizers hope this event will bring more opportunities to companies, and more importantly, it will boost domestic and global economies. So Huao, CGTN, reporting from the opening ceremony in Beijing.
Now, this year, the trade fair attracted more than 10,000 enterprises from about 153 countries and regions. Amongst them, 2,400 firms will showcase their products and services offline. Here's CGTN Senye with more.
expanding and now straddling two different compounds in Beijing. Organizers say the second edition of CIFTIS has seen growing interest from home and abroad. Together, the fair has 130,000 square meter worth of showcase space on the ground, and 4,400 companies are taking part online. And organizers say they believe the activities lined up will center on two big trends: digital and green.
We will show how China's service trade sectors have grown over the years, and for the first time we will create a special exhibition area for digital services. And this year is the first time we will go to Shougang Park.
Perhaps nowhere else in the Chinese capital better shows the drive to go green than the defunct steelmaker turned low-carbon convention center, the Shougang Park.
绿色低碳可装卸，因为我们都是可装卸式的展馆，而且它是钢结。
If you look at the CIFTIS exhibition halls, they are part of our green, low-carbon, reusable efforts. We can dismantle these steel exhibition halls for reuse too. And we also have other areas outdoors, built green, so there's no need for air conditioning.
So what remains of the steel factory, including the rust and the pipes, remind us really that this is a thing of the past. But the organizers here say they hope the second CIFTIS will point to the future. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
And now here's a look at all you need to know about the China International Fair for Trade and Services.
What exactly is trade in services and why does it matter? According to the World Trade Organization, unlike merchandise trade, trade in services refers to the sale and delivery of intangible products. These include transportation, tourism, telecommunications, advertising, computing, and accounting, among others. It can help economies achieve more rapid growth, enhance competitiveness of their companies, and improve the quality of life for the average consumer. Services have become the backbone of the global economy and the most dynamic component of international trade. Services accounted for nearly 2/3 of global GDP by 2020. Trade in services have been expanding rapidly, especially in China. In the first half of 2021, China witnessed the growth of both export and import of services, reaching 2.4 trillion yuan, or $367 billion. China's services trade deficit dropped by over 40% year-on-year. Meanwhile, the share of knowledge-intensive service trade also went up, reaching more than 1 trillion yuan. This accounted for close to half of China's total trade in services. The WTO says the growing significance of knowledge-intensive services in an economy is a sign of increased development and application of digital technologies. Trade body also says that digitalization is the future of services trade, as it creates new ways for the delivery of services. For these same reasons, CIFTIS made digitalization its theme this year. Visitors can explore the most cutting-edge research results and technology applications through the exhibitions and expert forums at the fair.
Well, let's now put the event in context. We're joined by Sizon Kala, a research fellow at the University of Johannesburg Center for Africa-China Studies. Great to have you with us today, sir. Now, this event is meant to be a key for African businesses, especially because it provides opportunities as we see China easing its market access in the service industry and, of course, further opening up key service sectors. So how significant do you think this is for China-Africa relations going forward?
Thank you for having me on your show, and good evening to your viewers. I think the China International Service Trade Fair is significant in pushing Africa-China relations further in terms of growing trade relations between China and Africa. Because the trade relations have been focused mostly on goods and merchandise. Now it can expand to services, services like construction, banking, finance, communication. So it gives that impetus for Africa-China relations to expand in terms of embracing more services.
Right. And of course, it's quite interesting because this year there is a focus on the digital space and, of course, green growth going forward. Compared to last year's event, how do you expect this year to push forward the momentum that we've seen in terms of cooperation between Africa and China, especially that one driven by innovation and climate goals?
I think innovation, in the context of the pandemic, innovation has become key in terms of restructuring and transforming economies and growing economies as well for both China and Africa. And then innovation in the light of a deteriorating climate change situation, it's become essential. Developing new technologies to grow economies, supply human needs and wants without in an environmentally friendly way. And then China is a key partner for Africa in that case, because it's a source of technology, it's a source of skills and expertise for African countries. So China and Africa will partner as they transform their economies into innovation-based economies.
Now, since last year's event, we have, or rather China has seen a number of projects by leading enterprises and, of course, foreign investors established in Beijing. How much of that progress, or do you have an idea of how much of that progress is from Africa? And certainly tying to that, how can Africa gain from events like the CIFTIS?
I think Africa has a lot to gain from these events. There are so many opportunities to exploit. I think it's an informative event, it's an educative event, it's an opportunity to build relations between Chinese business and African businesses. It's also an opportunity for African businesses and entrepreneurs to know more about Chinese business and environment, Chinese legislation. There are so many opportunities in import-exporting, in e-commerce, in marketing, in freight, in export management. There are so many opportunities that African business can take up in China. Of course, they've started taking up these businesses. There are no statistics yet as to the number of African businesses in China, but yeah, they have presences in different parts of China, especially in export management and export processing companies and consultancy. Since China and Africa have significant amounts of trade together, so Africans are exploiting that opportunity for import-export consulting, processing documents, and assisting Chinese business people with documents that are required to engage in business or export to African markets.
Well, many thanks for your insights there. We do have to leave it. That was, of course, Sizo Nkala, a research fellow at the University of Johannesburg Center for Africa-China Studies. And moving on now, digitization is expected to be a keyword this year, with a special section debuting this year solely dedicated to digital service companies. Here's Xie Hongshu with more.
This little guy here was designed to patrol construction sites. With the help of live cameras, AI and big data, this robot dog can detect anything that goes wrong on a site. This is just one example of what the people at Glodden, a company exhibiting in the digital service section, call digital construction. They provide digital solutions for construction projects, covering cost estimating, smart site management, and smart building. They say their services have helped clients to increase efficiency by at least 50%.
We used to have someone on the site to manually document how our personnel and equipment manage tasks. This requires time and energy, but now with the smart site system, which utilize big data, the Internet of Things and AI analysis, everything is visible on a screen. The location of workers, condition of equipment, and even potential accident risks.
The company is joining the fair for the second time. They say last year was a good first step, which allowed them to introduce the concept of digital construction to the market.
We have been exchanging a few rounds of conversation, in particular with one client, and we continue to engage with others. So I would say that all around the experience has been very positive. In fact, we are investing more and more this year, and we hope that this platform can give us the opportunity to meet more and more partners, future clients, prospects, and give us also maybe new ideas for our development.
The new digital service section will host around 40 leading companies in the industry, showcasing their latest contributions to digital construction, digital transport, and digital media.
The digitalization of services is becoming a new growth engine for the services trade. In 2020, China's trade volume in digital services saw a yearly increase of 8.4%, accounting for over 40% of the total trade in services.
The coronavirus pandemic continues to disrupt trade in services like tourism and transport, but the crisis has speeded up the growth of digital services. The fair's theme of a digital future and service-driven development echoes that trend and shows China's ambition to boost industry. CGTN, Beijing.
Well, on that note, China has continued to play a major role in financing and supplying telecom and ICT equipment to Africa. Chinese companies such as Huawei have helped to bring down charges and contributed to the success of mobile phones on the continent. Here's CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy with more.
Chinese telecom companies have in the past decade become key players in Africa's digital economy. Now, some of the telecom firms are now integrated in Africa's public and private sectors. The companies are providing digital infrastructure for projects like data centers, e-governance, telecom infrastructure, and undersea internet cables. Huawei's hardware equipment reportedly constitutes 70% of the 4G infrastructure in Africa. The company is also the first to offer 5G services in Africa. The Peace submarine cable, in which Huawei is a major player, is expected to offer the shortest submarine fiber cable route from China to Africa, with its landing zones in Djibouti and Kenya. Now, besides Huawei, Transsion Holdings Group reportedly controls 40% of the smartphone market in Africa. In 2020, its smartphone market share in the continent exceeded 40% and ranked number 1 by the end of the second quarter. Now, its brands include Tecno, Itel, and Infinix. Now, China's tech companies have also developed apps like Boomplay and Viskit that dominates Africa's social media landscape. In the mobile money segment, apps like PalmPay and OPay are backed by Chinese investors to make inroads into the fintech sector. Now, South Africa's Vodacom Group, in partnership with Alibaba, launched VodaPay, a super app that integrates mobile payment with e-commerce, business, and lifestyle services. Now, Chinese tech companies are also supplying various authorities with diverse digital infrastructure and services. Now, tech companies like Huawei and ZTE have secured government contracts to construct smart cities, data centers, and artificial intelligence and technology systems.
And let's now move on to our corporate headlines today. Diageo's Johnny Walker Princess Street has today been launched in the heart of Scotland's capital city of Edinburgh. Now, 4.5 years in the making, it is the centerpiece of Diageo's $255 million investment in Scotland's tourism sector. The program aims to rebuild Scotch whisky's tourism for the future. Last year, Johnny Walker celebrated about 200 years since founder John Walker opened the doors to his small grocery store. Meanwhile, American tech firm Apple will allow developers of some apps such as Netflix to link from its App Store to external websites for payments by users. This makes a modest concession to global scrutiny of the 30% cut it typically takes from services and purchases on the iPhone. Now, the rule is expected to still apply to games as well as in-app purchases. The company adds that the change will go into effect globally early in 2022. And Ireland's Data Protection Commission has imposed a $266 million fine on Facebook-owned WhatsApp, marking Europe's second largest penalty so far under GDPR privacy laws. Now, the regulator adds that the issues are related to whether WhatsApp conformed in 2018 with EU data rules about transparency. WhatsApp says the fine is entirely disproportionate and that it will appeal. And German railway firm Deutsche Bahn is set to take legal action against train drivers union GDL. This comes after the union rejected an improved pay offer and stepped up industrial action with a strike that crippled a large part of the company's passenger traffic on Thursday. Now, the strike is due to run until Tuesday. Of course, GDL is demanding a 3.2% increase for drivers, in addition to a coronavirus bonus of $711. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we are heading into a short break now, but do stay with us. Lots of news still to come.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Well, let's go to Tunisia now, where authorities have seized a record 30,000 tons of steel and iron bars at the country's second largest steel factory. Now, the huge quantities of metal were seized following a court decision. Authorities had accused a section of manufacturers of hoarding that resulted in prices skyrocketing by more than 60%. CGTN's Adnan Shaushi has more from Tunis.
Escorted by the National Guards and the police, Tunisian President Kais Saied raided the main steel factory in the suburbs of the capital city Tunis. Tunisian authorities had accused a group of 8 businessmen of creating an iron and steel cartel and imposing their own prices in the domestic market.
This is a small portion of what has been monopolized by those who think they can continue to steal from the Tunisian people by imposing prices. These individuals who want to control the market of steel, iron bars and other goods are no longer welcome in Tunisia. Either they return the people's money through legal means, or they will be met with a response for plundering the country's goods.
Professionals in the construction industry have deplored recurring increases in the price of iron in the domestic market. 2 increases have already been recorded this year, resulting in a rise of 25%, 14% in January and 9.5% in March. A third iron and steel price hike of 12% was scheduled for August, but it was blocked by the president's decision on July 25th.
The problem is that steel has completely disappeared from the market. Thousands of construction and public works projects have stopped. Tens of thousands of workers lost their jobs. Hundreds of companies are facing financial difficulties. The steel shortage is a real catastrophe. Now it is in the hands of judiciary officials to determine whether the crisis was voluntary or premeditated.
The president of Tunisia's National Federation of Building and Public Works Contractors says the steel and iron bar shortage has led to a deep crisis in the construction, public works and property development activities.
Since the beginning of the year, the prices of construction materials have skyrocketed to unprecedented levels. The hike used to be around 2, 3 or 5%, but now prices went up by over 150%. The sector's main actors say It is due to the global price rise, as well as the high shipping cost. This is disastrous for the country's construction and property development sector.
Tunisian property developers say that the shortage of iron in the market has affected their business. Many companies in the North African state have accumulated debts or have completely run out of cash and filed for bankruptcy.
Tunisian President Kais Saied deplored the steel shortage in the country despite the availability of raw materials for steel manufacturers. The president noted that the Trade Ministry will distribute the 310 tons of seized iron to supply the construction sites. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Meanwhile, authorities in Egypt's transportation ministry have resolved to keep the last carts in all passenger trains empty. They say no tickets will be sold in these carts until further notice. Now, the Egyptian Railway Authority says the move will help to confront train collisions and reduce the number of casualties resulting from the country's frequent rail accidents. Here's CGTN's Adel El Marhoui with more details.
Egyptian Railroad Authority issued new directives in August that dictate locking doors in all tail carts before a train heads to a passenger station. Train accidents are common in Egypt. Transportation Ministry says its new decision will save many lives.
The Egyptian government is trying to improve the rail services, increase safety and decrease accidents. There is a national development plan for the railroad that will be completed in 2024. From now till then, we know there will be frequent accidents, so the government took a step further to save lives in case of accidents, because statistics show that the last cart in the train usually has the highest fatalities.
While the decision clearly intends to protect people, it's still an indirect government statement that more deadly accidents are expected, and that sparked controversy in Egypt.
It is not a proper decision, thinking with the same philosophy. If I ban people from going on board the whole train, I'll save all lives, which doesn't make sense. It means in any way there will be an accident. What they should focus on is the commitment to speed limits and traffic lights. Many accidents are someone not aware who hits a truck on the same truck. With some rules, it should be avoidable.
I believe this is a good decision. It will save some lives because, unfortunately, every once in a while there's a train accident. There's often a train out of control. The lost cart will protect those who would be at the highest risk.
Instead of wasting space in the tail cart, the Railroad Authority is studying a proposal to dedicate it for luggage storage. Since 2013, Egypt has recorded more than 20,000 train accidents. Public statistics indicate that 2020 witnessed 1,963 accidents. That's an almost 9% drop from 2019's 2,044.
I believe the development plan for the railroad and such measures announced will increase the end users' trust in using trains, because all they want is better service and high safety measures. But neither of them is available, and that's what the Transport Ministry is working on.
The government is proceeding with a national program to purchase 110 locomotives and 1,300 carts by mid-2022. Egypt has one of the oldest railroad networks in the world. It was founded in 1854.
Stretching for more than 9,500 kilometers and carrying 500 million passengers annually, the Egyptian railroad network has been suffering from poor maintenance for decades. It is mostly run by old mechanical warning systems that rely on humans to operate, and that is one of the main reasons for the frequent accidents. The Egyptian Transportation Ministry says it needs about $16.3 billion to develop this long network. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a short break now, but still to come. Tanzania cuts mobile money transaction taxes by 30%. And we look at why communities in Nigeria's oil-rich regions are not happy with a new law.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
The Excellency, thank you very much for your time now. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
Let's now take a look at other headlines this hour. Remnants of Hurricane Ida have brought flash flooding to the New York City area in the U.S. At least 14 people were killed by the record-breaking rainfall, which swamped subways and neighborhoods. Now, transportation across New York City remains largely shut down. Crews used boats to rescue people from flooded cars and homes. Of course, Ida slammed into Louisiana as a Category 4 hurricane on Sunday before weakening as it moved northward. And the Egyptian capital, Cairo, on Thursday hosted a trilateral summit with Jordan's King Abdullah II and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Leaders of the three states focused on issues including the stalled peace talks between Palestine and Israel. And the army in the Democratic Republic of Congo says it has freed about 60 people who were taken hostage by a rebel group in the northeastern province of Ituri on Wednesday. At least 4 people were killed and 80 others reported missing after suspected rebels of the Allied Democratic Forces ambushed a convoy and set fire to vehicles. And Zimbabwe's government has further eased COVID-19 restrictions and will allow sports to resume and gyms to reopen. Art galleries and cinemas will also be allowed to open at 50% capacity for vaccinated visitors. And that's a recap of other headlines this hour. Now, Tanzania's government says it has reduced the amount that it collects from citizens in the form of mobile money transaction levies by 30%. The decision comes after weeks of public outcry over the taxes. Now, the government of Tanzania has set a target of collecting $2.1 billion in taxes on mobile money transactions over the next 5 years. Here's CGTN's Daniel Kijo with more.
After weeks of public disapproval and complaints, the government is making a change to mobile money transactions. It is cutting the amount it collects from citizens, slashing it by 30%. The finance minister says President Samia Suluhu Hassan is looking out for low-income Tanzanians.
The main aim is to ensure the rates are friendly so that citizens are not affected in their day-to-day activities. We know we have lots of young people, and this is where the president is looking at.
Many Tanzanians consider the amount being deducted as too high for many people in the country and felt it went against the government's financial digital inclusion agenda. The government has said it has so far collected about $27 million from the mobile money transaction levy, which kicked off on July 16th despite public disapproval. The new guidelines have been signed off and give a window of up to 7 days for mobile network operators to work on the programming of the new rates. The mobile money transaction levy was approved during the previous parliamentary budget session. The aim is to generate income for rural development and the improvement of infrastructure in the education sector. And this is just the start.
The president has instructed us to look at the whole revenue collection system. We should look at expenditure. We want to inspect the system to find cracks or leakages of public funds. I would like to assure our citizens that it's an area we are looking at.
The government says it also held talks with mobile service providers and they too agreed to reduce their mobile money transaction rates by 10%. Citizens are divided on the issue.
Citizens were supposed to be consulted before this started. Plus, even with this reduced deduction, it still affects the low-income Tanzanian, because you say you reduced 30%. This means when being charged 2,000 shillings, you only reduce 300 shillings. The remaining 1,700 is still too high.
So I think the government should sit down, strategize again. I mean, there are better ways of accumulating money for the country, but I don't think that this was the way to go.
In short, with these reduced charges, at least the pain has been lessened for us who use mobile money a lot.
The government hopes that this move will continue to provide it with revenue to implement development projects, but also offer relief to Tanzanians, allowing them to carry out their daily activities with slightly less financial burden. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
And heading to Egypt now, the country's new administrative capital city is a model of advanced technology systems. It is being built from scratch on the outskirts of Cairo. Designed to hold 6.5 million residents, the flagship city is expected to open its gates to its first civil servants later this year.
Egypt will soon have a new capital on the outskirts of Cairo. A new city that will be a model of technological advancement, where residents will use smart cards and apps to unlock doors, make payments, and surf the web on public Wi-Fi beamed from lampposts. There will also be at least 6,000 cameras networked to monitor activity at every street, tracking pedestrians and vehicles to regulate traffic and report suspicious activity. It's the new administrative smart city.
We want our citizens through the mobile app with the new capital to manage their whole life from their mobile phones.
Located a world away from parts of the existing sprawling capital, where creaking infrastructure can mean patchy internet and phone coverage. Officials say advanced technology systems will help to reduce waste by detecting leaks and faults.
We have the most modern applications for managing, for example, a criminal case. For example, the cameras we have are not simply surveillance cameras. That camera is like a security guard that is aware and is able to file a complaint.
Authorities plan to repeat and synchronize the technology through other developments championed under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, for whom the new city is a flagship project.
So, in the sense, why have this smart city? Well, I mean, if there is any concern in the future that people might gather in the new capital city to protest, and that the Egyptians want to have another way to deter those kind of demonstrations and or to identify who might participate, this will help them. So that it does add that effect in terms of setting a certain set of conditions when it comes to who might actually protest or demonstrate in the new capital city.
This model is being applied in all the new 14 cities that are being established. Although some Egyptians see the new capital being for a privileged elite, in a country where nearly a third of the population live below the poverty line, others see the technological boost as long overdue.
First of all, it will save time and effort. It will save all the obstacles of routine, paperwork and archiving, things like that. It will also be modern. I saw these things in Europe in the 1990s. These things are all very useful to the citizen.
Technology and communications contracts for the new capital total $640 million, which could rise to $900 million in the later phase. Officials say surveillance technology would be aimed at detecting crime and enhancing safety, and that data will be protected by the Egyptian law and international standards. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And let's move on now. A year after singer Akon laid the first stone to a $6 billion futuristic city which he vowed to build for his native country, Senegal. The site, which he called Akon City, still remains a lonely grassland. Now, the project was due to feature ultra-modern twisting skyscrapers. It was expected to create thousands of jobs for area residents. They are now beginning to wonder about its future. The ceremonial stone was laid on August 31st, 2020, and construction was scheduled to begin early this year. Now, the planned cost of Akon City was just $1.5 billion, shy of Senegal's overall 2020 budget of about $7.5 billion.
The people welcomed the project with enthusiasm. The people who have seeded this area since 2004 and until Akon's arrival in 2020, I think we could only be satisfied because, first of all, he is Senegalese, he's an African, and there was simply a desire to come and invest in the area.
We submitted a memorandum to Akon. We must avoid what we call gentrification, so there is not an Akon of skyscrapers, an Akon of big buildings and all, while next to it there is a Mbodieni of poor suburbs where people live in misery.
If the project is completed, Akon City should be an answer to the employment problems of the village youth. We will have no problem with them if the jobs that become available on the site are in our favor. Everyone must benefit.
Meanwhile, Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa toured the expansion project of the Gabriel Mugabe International Airport in Harare this week. Here, he expressed gratitude for China's unwavering support to Zimbabwe's economic development trajectory. The expansion includes the addition of a new international building, as well as 4 new bridges and an airfield ground, lighting and communication system. Now, the project is expected to increase the airport's holding capacity to 6 million people per year from a previous 2.5 million. The $153 million initiative, which received funding from the China Export-Import Bank, is ongoing despite some delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
We express our profound gratitude to the People's Republic of China and our comprehensive and strategic partnership framework. These are some of the acts the People's Republic of Government have done for our great country. This unwavering support remains a show of confidence which the government of the People's Republic of China have in our economic development trajectory.
And in Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari recently signed into law an oil overhaul bill that has been in the works for nearly 2 decades now. The bill was expected to improve the livelihoods of communities living on crude-producing land. However, as CGTN's Daniela Pearson now explains, life in the Delta region is far from rosy for the inhabitants, facing a potent mix of poverty, crude pollution, and of course, state neglect.
Nigerian farmer Nwale Nchimaunui walks through oil-polluted land in the Ogoni community. He celebrated when he learnt that an oil law to overhaul the industry and improve the plight of communities in crude-producing land had passed after 2 decades. But it soon turned to anger after it emerged that the law demanded oil companies contribute only 3% of operating costs to communities, far below the 10% they see as fair compensation.
We think that is not enough because the destruction was too much and the number of people there were much. And then I think the mode of sharing this money, they should look for basic amenities, look for things that will upgrade the community and put some things in place, like in Ebubu there is no water, there is no good school, there is no good road.
The 3% that government say they will give to us is very poor for us. Because like me, we have children now. How can I train them?
Ijama and 3 villages making up the Ogoni community in Ebubu recently won a ruling for $111 million in compensation from Shell. The company agreed to compensate the community over a 1970 spill that polluted over 225 hectares of the farmlands and fishing waters without acknowledging responsibility.
The money will be used for development, will be used to maintain those who have suffered for years. There are a lot of families that have died because of this spillage.
And coming to other areas in Ogoni, there are thousands of one places like that in Ogoni. So that same thing should be done to other communities in Ogoni. They should pay them the spillage and the damage they have done to them so that the community will revive back to life.
Despite the ruling, communities are still expressing discontent over the handling by oil companies.
We've not seen the money, but this was set under 21 days after the ruling, the final ruling. We're still expecting to get the money.
Look at my hand, oil all over.
Ijama currently boasts 57 oil wells once operated by Shell. While oil production has ceased, pipelines operated by Shell still traverse the land, creeks and waterways of Ogoniland. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
On that note, let's take a look at commodity markets today. Cocoa futures are up today over 2%. Now, dealers say the market was supported by an expected decline in production in West Africa during the upcoming 2021 and 2022 season, which begins next month. Also, Nigeria's cocoa output is likely to fall by at least 12.5% next season as late and heavy rains threaten to damage the main crop and raise the risk of disease. And meanwhile, oil prices edging higher today, supported by a sharp decline in U.S. crude stocks and a weaker dollar, though gains were capped by an OPEC Plus decision to stick to its policy of only gradually increasing output going forward. On that note, let's take a short break. Still to come. Tanzania's Serengeti National Park sees a return of tourism.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Aden, Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now heading to South Africa, the seasonally adjusted ABSA Purchasing Managers Index in South Africa rebounded in August 2021 following a record single-month decline in July. The PMI more than recovered from last month's steep declines and rose 57.9 points in August from a very low 43.5 points in July. Here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola with the details.
A normalization of demand and output for businesses affected by July's looting and a further boost from less strict lockdown restrictions meant that a recovery was always on the cards.
Given where we're coming from in July, when we had the waves of unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, which, as you know, account for 60% of all manufacturing here in South Africa, the escalation in lockdown restrictions, it does look like we've had a strong rebound from that.
There are some support factors that could sustain the improvement in the index.
One big domestic support factor has been the mining sector. Those guys have been doing pretty well here. Commodity prices have been quite strong. I mean, we've seen in the results of some major mining companies. So those parts of the manufacturing sector that have very strong links with the domestic mining companies, I think those can still do very well, same as those parts of the manufacturing sector that have strong links with the agricultural sector, for instance, domestically, that is also doing quite well.
An issue that manufacturers considered in the survey was whether the rebound is sustainable in the medium term.
Manufacturers themselves seem a little bit concerned about that. We do see the expectation sub-index coming down a little bit, and I suspect that what we may be seeing here is the renewed concerns that are starting to come up about the durability of the global economic recovery, and especially given the spread of the Delta variant of COVID-19 that we're seeing in some major markets around the world.
There are some domestic risks and structural factors that remain which could drive the index down. Eskom and load shedding is one of the risks.
As we get into next year here in South Africa, as some of the fiscal policy support, some of the monetary policy support that we've had, as some of that starts to fall off, can we see this economy sort of standing without that policy support? That is also a little bit of an unknown, and I think more of a risk for as we get into next year.
While the data is encouraging, the impacts of the July riots, arson and looting are still to be felt in the months ahead. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, Tanzania's Serengeti National Park has started to see the return of tourists from all over the world as countries push on with their vaccine rollouts. Thousands have come to the park to witness one of the world's most iconic sites, the Great Wildebeest Migration, as well as the Big Five of the African savanna. Now, officially established in the early 1950s, the Serengeti is one of Africa's oldest national parks and one of the most famous in the world. Here's CGTN's Daniel Kijo, who visited this great park and brought us this story.
The Serengeti National Park is not only a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it is also one of the most famous wildlife sanctuaries in the world. Of all of Tanzania's 22+ national parks, the Serengeti is the crown jewel, generating almost half of the total revenue for the Tanzania National Parks Authority. Juliet Sumari has been a guide at the park for over 4 years. After a year of disruptions due to COVID-19 travel restrictions, she says she's glad crowds have picked up this summer, as vaccinated tourists from all over the world come to witness one of the most spectacular sights in the natural world.
We thank God the situation now is not like it was last year. Now we have guests, as you can see. Every couple of days you receive tourists. Little by little, over time, we can get a lot. So I'm thankful to God.
The park is the ultimate destination to spot lions, rhinos, elephants, leopards and buffaloes, commonly known as Africa's Big Five. The Serengeti Park was named Africa's leading park in 2019 and 2020 by the World Travel Awards. Tourists who came to the park say they are not disappointed.
Every day we have had something that we thought could not possibly be topped, and the next day is even more spectacular. So we've been able to see all the animals in the Big Five, so much more variety and wildlife than I thought we would encounter. In practice, it's been absolutely incredible.
You hear it before you see it. One of the Serengeti's most sought-out sights, the thundering hooves on the Great Plains, as a great migration gets underway. Over 1.5 million wildebeests in perpetual motion. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, each year over 450,000 tourists from all over the world come to the Serengeti to witness this. Thousands of wildebeest crossing River Mara into the Masai Mara Reserve. The Serengeti continues to lure the world's top celebrities, musicians, actors and sports personalities. It has been the site of many Hollywood productions and the inspiration behind Disney's The Lion King. But visitors say seeing it in the flesh is much more fulfilling.
To see this reality.
I have seen this from a lot of virtual reality, some documentary, television and publicity. But to be here to see this with my own eyes is amazing.
The Serengeti showcases the beauty of the world's circle of life. And after a difficult year, those here hope growing visitor numbers will breathe fresh life into the country's tourism sector. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Serengeti, Tanzania.
And the Middle East now has a major new seaport, and that's thanks to China's Belt and Road projects. It serves the northern Israeli city of Haifa. Its automated container operation was set up by the Shanghai International Port Group, which will also operate the facility. Here's Zhang Shishwan with more.
To the music of an opening ceremony, the first container was lifted at the new port in Israel's transportation and industrial center of Haifa. The container was consigned to a 15,000 20-foot equivalent unit container ship, the first mega vessel to be loaded with cargo by the new port's automation control system. Opened yesterday, the terminal was developed and is now operated by the Shanghai International Port Group.
The traveling crane and storage yard are both operated by an automated system, just as at Shanghai's fourth phase Yangshan Deepwater Port, which is now the world's biggest automated container terminal. The remote operation system and the automated equipment in the new port are all similar to those in the fourth phase of Yangshan Port. But we've made adjustments to local conditions in Israel in terms of the remote connections to trucks, shipping agencies, and freight forwarders. The port will be the most efficient one in Israel.
Despite the challenges of the pandemic, it took the company just around 3 years to finish construction of the new port. The first phase, with an 805-meter short-line terminal, will have an annual container throughput of more than 1 million TEU. This is the first new port opened in a Middle Eastern country for the past 60 years. And with almost all of Israel's trade carried by sea, it has given the country a new gateway to the world.
Israel is isolated from nearby countries, so the development of ports is very crucial to its economic growth. With the advanced technology and rich experience provided by SIPG, we hope the new port will not only serve Israel's demands, but also become a regional logistics hub to serve Gulf countries or even the entire Middle East.
The opening of the new port comes at a time when seaports around the world are struggling with shipping congestion. A recent report from Swiss shipping company Kuehne+Nagel says more than 100 ports around the world are backed up, with some 350 ships waiting to dock and unload. The delays have led to longer delivery times and higher prices. The hope is that with the improvements the Shanghai International Port Group will bring to Haifa's operations, the global shipping capacity and mobility will be enhanced.
Previously, a great deal of cargo for the Mediterranean had to be unloaded in other ports, but Israel is a gateway to the Eastern Mediterranean, a very important logistics hub and closely connected with the Shanghai port. A large proportion of cargo from Shanghai now has to use surface transport in the Europe-Mediterranean area. With the new port, shipping services will be strengthened, and there will be better connections with Shanghai.
Experts say the Haifa deal also demonstrates an innovative model for local companies, a build, operate, transfer, or BOT contract. Those help Chinese firms export services and capabilities to overseas countries and better promote the Belt and Road Initiative.
Chinese companies have been participating in a great deal of Israel's infrastructure construction, but most of them were just handling construction and then turning projects over to the locals. The cooperation on the new port in Haifa utilizes the BOT model, with construction followed on by a 25-year operation arrangement. It's a win-win deal. China wants to expand the Belt and Road Initiative and build a more efficient and connected logistics network, and the operator has full operational independence. Israel gets an infrastructure upgrade while retaining full sovereignty over its land and resources.
Wang points out that as Haifa's operations mature over the next 25 years, it may lead more overseas countries and regions along the Belt and Road to have greater interest in working with Chinese companies on larger infrastructure projects. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, China's non-financial outbound direct investment in BRI projects still came to $13 billion in the first 9 months of last year, a year-on-year increase of almost 30%. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
And that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.